Thank you for watching and welcome back to News Diary. Now, the issue of public spending has hit the headlines recently, with even the president giving his views on the same. And as we speak right now, Barack Muluka, strategic communications strategist and matters politics, is being interviewed on Spice FM on this. Let's now just cross over to Spice FM and follow through that interview.
Its biggest conversation, 6th of October. We're getting closer and closer to the 29th of October, when what will be happening? It'll be Kenya's largest single-day athletics event. It takes place at Uhuru Gardens. That's where we start off. And it's in name of the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. Are you getting ready for that? I do hope you are. Have you registered? If you haven't, log on to www.nairobimarathon.com. You register with 2,000 shillings, and then you get ready for that race, which happens then on the 29th. Sunday morning. You can also participate in the virtual run, which takes place a week before that, and then put your times on the leaderboard and see how you compare with those who take place in the physical race a week after. All right, the Future Makers program is the program that benefits from this, and it means that young people, especially girls and those living with disability, have the chance to earn, learn and grow. So log on today, register for that, and let's get a run in on the 29th of October. The conversations around how government can cut its spending and how we can make sure that a little bit more goes round and that folks will not have to suffer as much as they are today is what we'll be having this hour. And as we do that, a friend of ours is in the studio this morning. Dr. Barack Muluka is Strategic Communications Advisor, and he's here with us this morning. Barack, it is good to see you.
Always a very great pleasure to see you, Ndo, City. And of course, Eric is in the habit of running away whenever he hears that I'm coming.
You know,
tell him that is be patient.
You've noted.
Yes.
So we must find a way to tie the gentleman down.
Okay.
The next time you're coming.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have you. City has a long in the tooth proverb from Uganda today.
Very good. Let's hear it.
This is our final proverb from the country of Uganda. What you have not... Let me say it again.
Okay.
What you have not yet got in your possession, do not consider as yours. Full stop. That's part one. Second part. They took back the bananas you had stolen at night.
Aha. So they probably should have been stolen during the day.
then they'd be yours?
They would not have been taken away. They would have remained in your possession.
I think if you had taken them during the day, you should have consumed them as well.
That's right. You'd have had them for dinner.
You see, you have to attempt to understand that world, that cosmology. And it comes all the way to Western Kenya. Now, about bananas that you have in your possession. The tradition is that if you should be walking by, maybe during the day, perhaps even the night, and should you feel hungry, you can actually get into anyone's plantation, take some of the bananas, and eat, and leave there whatever you are not able to eat. Mm-hmm. If you take it away, then you are considered to have stolen, and they will take it back. Okay? So, sit down.
You've contextualized. You eat, you're allowed to eat it.
Yes.
But not to carry it.
Not to carry it.
Okay.
And it's a very African thing. African hospitality.
Eat and have your fill.
That's it.
Yeah.
But do not carry.
And then you see, if we behave that way, there's no wastage because we move away from primitive accumulation. One of the biggest challenges about us and around us is what Marx and Engels in their day called primitive accumulation, that you are gathering and assembling and stocking and storing away things that you will never have any use for. Because, let's face it, you can only do one plate at a time. It doesn't matter how much you have, the rest belongs to other people. It's not yours. You're hoarding.
It's a biblical theory as well, isn't it? Do not gather up for yourselves in barns and etc. etc. Right.
Yes, well, and you remember the rich fool, the one who said, now
my heart,
I'm going to expand my stores and pile there as much as possible and say to my soul, soul, now eat to your satisfaction and fulfillment and rest.
Okay. Kenyans are not eating to their satisfaction and fulfillment and rest, Barack. And there's been a lot of fear. There's been consternation. There's been anger. But I think above and beyond all of that, there's been fear in terms of then what tomorrow holds for Kenya. And one of the fingers that has been pointed right at government in terms of how much they've been spending. Rather, how much government has been spending. I'm not going to say they, because, we've often said that government is collective, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Let's look at government expenditure in Kenya. It stood at 2.53 trillion shillings. That's around $17.41 billion from July 2022 to May 2023. In the fiscal year 2021-2022, government spending in Kenya totaled 3.02 trillion shillings. The amount consisted of interest payments, number one. Number two, salaries and wages. Number three, pensions, payments for maintenance. And number four, operations. Expenditures incurred on projects were also included. It's a lot of money in terms of what has been spent. We've seen a couple of things happen in the recent days, and we do not know if it was falling to pressure. But then the president did come out very clearly and said, look, across the ministries, let's have a 10% reduction in how much we spend, because this cannot be. A week or so before that, we did see the huge amounts of money that was being spent on travel by the executive, travel by ministries. And the question is, was this all necessary? Is it possible to save the situation by a significant reduction in the amount of money that government is spending? I think that's the question over us right now, Barack.
Thank you, Ndu. I see that you fire through multiple barrels. I will attempt to isolate them and address them one at a time to the best of my ability. But first, let me begin by making a confession, a disclaimer.
Okay.
I'm not an expert on matters of the economy, but a lot of these things are commonsensical, and therefore my approach is going to be a common sense based approach, and also as a Kenyan, and therefore make my contribution this morning as any citizen of this country should do, because they feel the pinch as well. You have given us, Ndu, the expenditure. What is missing, of course, is the other entry, because in finance, the experts would talk about double entry, and you begin by showing us the income, then you can show us the expenditure, and at the end of it we have the balance sheet. So your sheet is not balanced. It has got only one leg.
I don't think the government sheet is balanced either.
I don't know. I don't have the facts. But I think that it behooves us to be able to have the two entries, credit and debit. And therefore, we are able to talk about the bottom line in a very meaningful way. But more frontally, Ndu and my brother sitting, when you are in a hole, they say, you discover you are in a hole as in H-O, not as in H-A, you decide that you must stop digging. If you do not stop digging, we probably are going to inter you in that hall. And therefore, I would understand the context within which the President, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, and the head of public service, HOPS, it's called HOPS, what they are doing springs from the consideration that the country is in a hole, and therefore you have got to stop digging. Is that enough?
To stop digging?
To stop digging, or even just the extent that has been defined that we are going to stop or to control foreign travels, excursions into other people's spaces, and the expenses that go with those excursions and the rationalization of those excursions. Of course, it speaks to the notion of enough. Or enoughness, adequacy. What does it mean when we say that it's enough, that we have done all that is adequate, all that is sufficient, and perhaps we can now stop there, that there's nothing left to be done? I don't think that is the case. There's always a scope for a lot more to be done, and in fact that scope is much bigger, wider and broader. And if we are saying that what the President and the head of public service are saying is the first aid intervention, then we must now start going beyond that and diagnosing the problem a lot more. You see, if you get to the casualty in a hospital environment and you're bleeding, the first thing they do is to attempt to stop the bleeding. But then they must take you through the triage, they must do proper diagnosis, and they must eventually find and prescribe a regime that is going to deal with your case. And I think that a lot more remains to be done, that is not just in the space of government, that starts touching on all of us. If you look at cost, and I said this was going to be a commonsensical approach.
Sure.
Travel, movement, bring it home. Let's look at the way we are cruising on the roads. Let us look at the kind of motor vehicular kind of engagement. How many vehicles of what size, for how many persons?
By whom, Barack? The government?
I'll start from government.
Okay.
And then I'll move away from government, because in the end, it is about the resources that are available and how we are putting those resources to use. Within government, we saw, for example, that when Uhuru Kenyatta was Minister for Finance at some point, I think 2007, 2008, 2009, and he issued this directive that now we would only use vehicles of up to a certain capacity. Of course, it was flouted. It didn't last. But we need to get into that space and ask ourselves, do we really need the vehicles of this kind of capacity that we use in government? Do we need to have an individual like City Muga here having 5 or 6 of them in his entourage, and Barack perhaps having 8 or 9 or 10? We must start from that space. And having delimited those ones, we must also recognize that it goes into the space of what everybody else has. There have been countries here, Singapore, which is cited a lot of times as the model, the role model, where Lee Kuan Yew at some point said, now we are going to restrict our motor vehicle use in this country to such and such capacity, because we have got to ask ourselves where the fuel is going. The size of government. Are we willing to look at the size of government, city in this country? And the size of government has been a problem for decades. If you look at the economic surveys, over the decades, right from when we still had President Moi here, through President Kibaki, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and now President William Ruto, expenditure on development has never been above 15%.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, it's played at the mouth of 11 and 12%.
11-12%. The rest is recurrent. We need to ask recurring so that it then supports what? Now we are in space where we brought another layer on board called devolved government. When we are looking at government expenditure, we fall short of being accused of being myopic if we do not look at the 48 counties when they are doing the devolution conference, where my brother Eric was the other day. They talk about 48 governments and they put it there in screaming letters, 48 governments. In other words, they are talking about the 47 counties plus one, the national government. And the consumption. When you get to county government, it's like you've been given free license to do howsoever you wish. Nairobi is proposing to buy motorboats.
Is that?
Well, okay, we don't know
I
if
saw that, but I'm not.
we're not quite sure if that's the thing.
But anyway, the point you make is a valid one.
Even if we say motorboats only from a figurative perspective,
Yes.
That's how they are going to deal with El Nino. We are seeing the attitude. The attitude is that the public coffers are there to be tapped, to be exploited. President Nyerere used to say Mali ya Umma. And some people will ask you, Mali ya Umma. Someone who said it does not belong to our mothers. and because it does not belong to our mothers, it can be spent howsoever those who are in those places want. Today is Friday. And in the counties across the country, without exception, when they say, thank God, it's Friday. They're saying, Chief of Staff, today I want 600,000. I want 1 million. I've got a funeral. I've got 4 funerals. I've got I don't know how many weddings. I've got so many harambes. These are things that we have got to be very frank about.
So I hear,
if we have been having a national dialogue somewhere, have we been talking about how we are going to cut down?
So then I hear what you're saying is that there is an absolute need to cut down. And you've talked about 3 areas here. Number one,
and there's a 4th one which I'll come to.
Okay, so let me say those 3 that you talk about travel. It is not necessary, number one, to have these, what have been so, affectionately referred to as guzzlers. We don't need to have them in the numbers in which we do. We see the reduction of that. We will see a reduction in costs. The travel, all over the world to get certain things done doesn't need to be as frequent or as expensive as it is. We're also talking about for the 47 different county governments, things are happening outside of development that perhaps need to be checked. And if we see a reduction in those things, we'll see that you could mop up some more funds for you to do have a lot more development take place. Is that what you're saying?
Can I ask a question, even as Barack thinks about this? You see, the travel, the guzzlers, the huge entourages, in terms of what they cost, the buying of it, the cost of the travel, what really is the problem there? Yes, there is a cost attached to it, But in terms of a national budget, how significant is it? Number one. Number two, is it the optics that we find offensive? Because amidst this glaring poverty and a downward spiraling state of despondency among very many citizens, are we saying that this manifestation of this very conspicuous consumption is what we find abhorrent, is what we find detestable?
I consider that it is all that rolled into one. I consider that when you look at some of the counties, some of the reports that we saw as recently as 3-4 weeks ago, had spent only up to 2% on development.
Yeah.
If you are spending 2% on development and 98%
on the current
expenditure, how do you justify, how do you just begin to justify your existence? We are spending 98% on this county so that you give us what in return? The 2% is a pittance. Yeah, you might as well just pack up and go.
Exactly an insult.
Yeah, it actually is. Stay with it then, yeah.
And